My name is Ethan. I bought my parents a $450,000 home, locked the door, and left a note. When I came back, my sister and her husband had moved in, saying it belonged to them. I'm the oldest child and the one who fixes everything. I'm 36 and work as a neurosurgeon. My life fits into a suitcase at home and a locker at the hospital. At 3 a.m., I track my schedule, patient pages, and tasks. I don't drink much. I run when I can. Growing up with overdraft fees taught me to save nearly all my income. See you next month. That's what I told myself while becoming the child who had to interpret adult fear. At age 10, I'd tell my mother, "It'll be okay," while she cried about unpaid. I found a small blue house by the lake. It had warm light, slightly crooked windows that whistled when the bay wind blew, a white deck, and 2 palm trees. It cost $450,000. I stocked the fridge, put everything in their names, connected the utilities, and hid a note in the cutlery drawer, wishing them loud laughter and slow mornings. I liked tea. I didn't tell anyone, not even my sister. I drove over that day with sparkling cider and a cake. The sky was unfairly beautiful, and the ocean looked clear. I was excited, but an unfamiliar SUV sat in the driveway. That was already wrong. The front door was ajar, the wind slamming the screen. I went inside. In the kitchen, my mother held a dish towel like a white flag. Her eyes were red. My father sat in a chair, shoulders slumped, hands shaking. Boxes were all over the house. I heard noise from the hallway. The living room TV wasn't even set up yet. Then my brother-in-law Brandon stepped out wearing a football jersey, holding alcohol, and barefoot. The plastic cake topper pressed into my palm as he stood in front of my father, pointed toward the door, and yelled, "This is my house! Get out!" My sister Megan laughed from the couch. "Relax, Dad. We're just settling in." Before explaining what happened next, I should give some background. Megan is 2 years younger. She was always the artist, the free spirit, the just going through something child. My parents handled it by minimizing, protecting, and sacrificing. I helped the only way I knew, financially. Before Brandon's startup attempts, I paid for her textbooks, helped during semesters she didn't finish, and even covered her first apartment's down payment. When their dental insurance had a strange deductible, I paid for her oldest child's braces. When the bank turned them down, I took a loan for a used minivan. After an eviction, I co-signed a lease. Many of my Venmo payments looked like diary entries. Each transfer felt like I was trying to smooth out the rough edges of our family. Megan's power bills, Brandon's interview suit, Mia's field trip, rent, again and again. Just this one time. In small and obvious ways, I was wrong. My parents also helped. Mom called it cleaning out the pantry while loading food into Megan's trunk. Dad lent Brandon tools so he could attempt repairs that usually cost more to fix afterward. The family refrain stayed the same. "You know your sister. Not everyone's like you, Ethan. You were born old." Even when landlords threatened lock changes in the morning, I kept helping. I became like a credit card everyone swiped without checking the balance. When I found the beach house, I planned everything like a surgery. The deed was placed in a trust with my parents as lifelong beneficiaries. I paid property taxes from a separate account for 20 years. HOA fees were covered up front. When I changed the locks, the keys in my hand felt like a life raft, something I could give them privately, without attention. A week before their anniversary, I told my parents. We drove together. Dad touched the stair railing like it was something precious. Mom opened every cabinet, inhaling the smell. We sat on the deck and listened to birds. Dad tried to speak but got choked up, so I said, "It's yours." Mom said it smelled like open windows and lemons. I slept there on an air mattress to check the plumbing. Everything worked. I returned to the city the next morning for a surgery on a child with a plum-sized tumor. My parents stayed at the house. Then the system acted like it always does. Megan called my mother. By that evening, she had figured out the location from a blurry sunset photo Dad posted on Facebook. She asked, "Are you at the beach? Whose house?" My mother, a poor liar, said, "We're visiting a friend." Megan arrived with Brandon, the dog, the kids, and a sense of ownership that filled the driveway. Later, my mother whispered over the phone, "We'll talk when you get here." By Saturday morning, my father texted that there was some confusion about the property. They just wanted to see it. Now they're staying for the weekend. Is that okay? I answered, "It's not a rental home. I'll come down." Megan kept asking for things, but I was in surgery and couldn't pick up the phone. Then she posted a #manifesting selfie in my parents' kitchen with the caption, "Home Sweet Home." Her friends commented, "So deserved. Brandon Beach era." My hand throbbed where I hold a scalpel for hours. One caption read, "Finally a place where the kids can just be kids." After surgery, I texted my dad, "Don't sign anything. Don't agree to anything. Love you." Then I drove straight there. I rehearsed calming phrases, but when I walked into the open door, Brandon was already saying, "You two are old. Stairs are dangerous. You'll fall. This is a family home. We're family. We'll manage it." My mother tried to speak. "It's Ethan's gift." Brandon cut her off. Megan didn't move from the couch. "He gave it to you. You're giving it to us. Same thing. Don't be dramatic, Mom. We'll handle bookings." "Bookings?" I asked. Brandon motioned toward the view. "Prime waterfront. Peak season. I listed it this morning. Easy income. You two can use the basement when you're here." I looked at my father's trembling hands. This was the same man who once worked 3 jobs and still showed up to my school concert in a dirty uniform. Now he was being told to step aside in a home he had just learned was his. I was raised to be useful, not loud. But my dad's last text had asked for help. I set the cake on the counter. It looked out of place among the makeup and fast food wrappers. When I spoke, my voice was steady. Brandon rolled his eyes. "Who told you this is your house?" Mom's face collapsed. Megan said, "Family money, family house. Don't be weird. We're not asking, we're updating." Brandon pointed at my father again. "Ethan, explain." Megan added, "He can explain from the porch." My father whispered, "Baby, stop." He tried to stay calm. Something inside me aligned. "Everyone to the living room," I said. It wasn't loud, but it was precise. Even the dog stopped chewing a pillow. People like Brandon assume every room belongs to them, so he followed. Under my parents' framed wedding photo from 40 years ago, I stood by the fireplace. My pulse pressed in my thumbs. From my bag, I pulled a folder and set 5 documents on the coffee table. "Deed," I said, tapping the first page, "recorded last week." Brandon blinked like the words were unfamiliar. "The property is owned by the trust. My parents, John and Grace, are the lifetime beneficiaries with exclusive right of occupancy. You do not receive a key." I tapped the second page. "This is the trust instrument. As successor trustee, I'm required to maintain the property for my parents' comfort and remove anyone who interferes." Megan said softly, "Ethan, you're not serious. We're helping." I placed the third item, a color screenshot, on the table. "This is the Airbnb listing you posted, using photos you took without permission. Entire home, House rules. Calendar booked every weekend through August. Payouts going to your bank account ending in these digits. Brandon, I blurred the rest for the kids. He shrugged. So what? The money could help your parents. I put down the fourth item. Megan didn't notice Dad had sent me a printed copy of their group chat. Her message said, "We'll get him to agree. He always gives in if Mom cries. I'll guilt him about med school loans." Then she wrote, "So excited to finally have a beach base." Megan grabbed at the paper. I pressed my hand over it and placed the fifth item, a laminated copy of the HOA regulations, on the table. I focused on the clause. No short-term rentals. "Here's what's going to happen," I said. "Today you will gather your things, take down the listing, message every reservation to tell them the house isn't available, and issue refunds." Megan blinked like she hadn't heard me correctly. "You'll leave the house key on the table and apologize to Mom and Dad for scaring them in their own kitchen." She gave a short, sharp laugh. "Or what, Tommy?" "Or," I said, "I'll carry out my responsibilities as trustee." Brandon stepped forward and shouted, "Duty this," puffing out his chest like a child. I stayed calm because my mother whispered, "Brandon, please, I don't like shouting. I like clarity." I set my phone on the table, screen facing up. On it was a drafted email with attachments to the HOA board reporting the property's unlawful use, another message to the local council, and a third to the county recorder, including the Airbnb link. When Dad sent his first text about the situation, there was already confusion. On my drive down, I had called a locksmith named Victor, and he was parked 2 houses away. Brandon shifted when he noticed him. "You wouldn't." "I would," I said, "and I already have." Megan grabbed my mother's arm. "Mom, tell him this is family." My mother couldn't meet her eyes. Then she looked at me, voice unsteady. Brandon's tone softened. "Do what you need to do." Yet he used the same careless gesture he had started with, pointing at the door again. I stepped between him and my father. "Don't point at my father again," I said quietly. "I've handled brains that move like wings. My hands won't shake." I leaned in. "Do it again, and the only door you'll see is the one Victor is about to lock from the outside." Everyone went still, even the dog. Megan tried one more time. "You're being harsh. You're leaving your family behind." "I'm done being your wallet," I said. "That isn't abandonment. That's a boundary." Brandon muttered under his breath. He reached toward the folder, maybe thinking he could grab the deed or tear something and somehow break a trust. I simply took the papers back and looked at my father. "Dad?" He swallowed. "Would you like to stay in your living room?" I asked. "Yes," he said. No one else moved. "Then everyone who doesn't live here should start packing." The doorbell rang. Victor. Perfect timing. Chaos usually takes longer to unwind than to begin. It took 3 hours. Brandon had a small outburst in the driveway, while Victor changed the lock. He made a phone call about legal matters, kicked the curb, and whispered to Megan. The dog barked sharply. The kids moved around like embarrassed shadows, stuffing clothes into bags and watching me like they expected an explosion. There wasn't one. I boiled water in the kettle I bought and sat with Mom at the kitchen table. She kept blotting her eyes with a napkin. "I didn't want to tell you," she said. "I thought we could ease things over. They came in so fast. They said it would help us. Less cleaning. No stairs for your father. They said they'd handle the difficult parts." "The difficult parts are the parts that make this home theirs," I said. She nodded. I recognized that small, guilty nod. She used to apologize for the weather when I was a kid. Dad stared out at the lake. "I thought I'd be stronger," he said. I should have told them to leave. You called me, I replied. That was the strong part. I opened my laptop in the living room, connected to my hotspot, and canceled every unauthorized booking. Each guest was notified the listing was removed by the owner and that a refund was sent. For the one who threatened a bad review, I attached the HOA regulation. I sent a note to the neighbors too. You may have seen cars. There was a misunderstanding. There will be no short-term rentals at 24C Spray. Megan made a few attempts to reshape the narrative. First attempt, we were just excited for them. She sat on a packed bag, holding her face in a practiced expression. Second attempt, it makes sense if you think about it. You're never here. They're getting older. We're the ones with energy. Third attempt, you think money makes you the parent, Ethan? You buy things so you don't have to be a real person. She froze when I answered, I bought a house for our parents. Not a free pass for you to take it. Remember this, she said. I will, I replied. Brandon refused to hand over the key. Come and take it, he smirked, right as Victor finished installing the keypad lock. His advantage vanished with the ocean breeze. I reached past him, hit the 0 button, and set the new code Dad chose. He tried a different tactic. You think your paperwork makes you clever? I know someone who does, I said, and my guy is about to explain why a trust wins over a tantrum. I wasn't bluffing. They carried their boxes to the SUV. Megan paused on the porch. You could have talked. To me. I've been talking to you for 10 years, I said. Her mouth tightened. You'll regret this when they need help and you're not around. I watched Mom pour tea. I looked at Dad's hand, finally steady on the armrest. I'm around for them, I said. Their car pulled away. The dog barked at the window like it had an opinion on property law. The house felt different, but also the same. Through the screen, I could hear the ocean again. I heard my parents breathing. I picked up juice cartons, a plastic tiara, 2 odd socks, and a trash bag, walking from room to room. In the guest room drawer, I found a folded paper, Brandon's business plan. He predicted a monthly profit 5 times the HOA fine. Megan had written in the margin, Ethan won't say no if Mom cries. I dropped the paper like it was sharp. Mom apologized again about the chaos. It's just crumbs, I kept saying. As the sun lowered, Dad held my arm. Son, he said, I don't know how to say this without sounding like I failed both of you. You didn't fail us, I said. You gave us everything you had. You just gave too much to her for too long. We all did. He nodded, because the truth finally felt like relief. I made a simple dinner. We ate on the terrace because the mouse only left the apartment on Sundays. Mom shared a story about her first place and the mouse she named Bernard. Dad laughed quietly. He only laughs like that when he isn't worried about anyone else. My phone buzzed non-stop. Megan sent, You made Mom cry. Brandon texted. Then an unknown number, one of his relatives, wrote, Cease and desist, Dr. Boy. We're coming next weekend, right? We already invited people. I ate my salad and set the phone face down. I set the alarm for that night, to reassure my parents. I installed a small porch camera with a cheerful chime. I printed the codes in large letters so Dad could read them without his glasses and placed them in a folder labeled Happy Things. Another drawer, called Boring Armor, held copies of the trust, deed, and HOA rules. Mom stood by the doorway as I was leaving, sweater pulled close. She said, I'm sorry it came to this. I'm not, I said. It needed to. The next week felt unstable, like a table with a short leg. In our family group, Megan launched a loud campaign claiming I had stolen the grandchildren's house. Cousins I barely talked to sent me screenshots of her Instagram stories, white text on plain backgrounds. I didn't respond when she posted, "When money makes you cruel," or when she uploaded a picture of my car in the driveway with the caption, "Some people think they can buy love." I installed a small porch camera with a cheerful chime. I printed the codes in large letters so Dad could read them without his glasses, and placed them in a folder labeled Happy Things. Another drawer, called Boring Armor, held copies of the trust, deed, and HOA rules. Mom stood by the doorway as I was leaving, sweater pulled close. She said, "I'm sorry it came to this." "I'm not," I said. It needed to. The next week felt unstable, like a table with a short leg. In our family group, Megan launched a loud campaign claiming I had stolen the grandchildren's house. Cousins I barely talked to sent me screenshots of her Instagram stories, white text on plain backgrounds. I didn't respond when she posted, "When money makes you cruel," or when she uploaded a picture of my car in the driveway with the caption, "Some people think they can buy love." I created distance. When our aunt called, she still spoke honestly. I explained simply that my parents owned the house and it would remain theirs for the rest of their lives. I asked her not to spread more family stress. "Okay, Ethan," she said, and left it at that. I sent Megan and Brandon a short, polite, and very plain email with 3 bullet points. I will handle all communication regarding the house. You are not allowed on the property. The HOA and our lawyer will act on any violation. I set an automatic response for any future messages they sent about the house. I promised myself not to negotiate with people whose patterns always ended the same way. 2 days later, a new notification arrived. A fresh reservation request. Cottage by the Sea Spray, with a picture of the back deck. Brandon had relisted the house under a different account. I forwarded everything, deed, trust, screenshots to the platform's safety team. The listing disappeared 10 minutes later. The user was banned. It didn't feel like a victory, more like doing cleanup after a long game. One morning, Dad called to say he had finally slept through the night, and the house smelled like toast and salt again. Mom sent a picture of her feet on the deck rail, bright pink nail polish. I remembered thinking she looked like a movie star when I was 5. They looked lighter. In the background, Megan kept pushing. She sent a payment request through an app for emotional damages. She wrote to my parents calling herself their primary caregiver, something that had never been true. Brandon posted a meme implying I sold organs for money, a syringe next to a $sign. But inside the small blue house, the air stayed calm. One evening, Megan called from a blocked number. I answered, maybe out of hope, maybe softness. When she heard me, she went silent. Then whispered a new tactic. "Ethan, listen, we're behind. Brandon lost his contract. We're going to lose the apartment, the kids." I closed my eyes. Empathy only goes so far before it becomes fuel. "Megan," I said, "I will not discuss the house." Her voice changed instantly. "So money matters more to you than family?" She hung up. Boundaries, I reminded myself, are what let me stay family instead of becoming a bank. I let the quiet settle, the way you would let a patient rest, protected, watched, still healing. 2 weekends later, I drove down early. I had coffee in a thermos, and out of habit, my stethoscope was still around my neck. The water looked calm, like it was holding its breath. I fixed a stiff door hinge. I hung tennis balls in the garage so Dad could park without hitting the wall. I labeled the breakers, Dad loves labels. Mom made pancakes and burned the first batch. We talked about groceries and Jan, the neighbor who collects shells and complains about the pelican that won't behave. For an hour, no one mentioned Megan. It felt clear. Mom touched my hand after breakfast. "I'm going to talk to your sister," she said. "Not to argue, just to say no." "I'm not asking you to choose," I told her. "I'm not interested in scorched earth fights where people declare winners. I just want a peaceful porch for you two." Mom smiled softly. "It's not choosing. It's stopping the pretending." Dad cleared his throat. "I should have taught that better. I taught you to work, not to stop. You taught me how to stay," I said. "I'm just learning how not to get swallowed." I walked around the house, tightened the gate lock, and checked the camera angle. I printed a small sign for the entry table. "Welcome home, John and Grace." Simple, but right. Later, standing alone on the balcony, I wondered what headline my sister would write if she controlled my story. "I gave my parents a house and ruined my family." That wasn't the truth. I stopped feeding the troll under the bridge. That's all. I gave a gift and protected it so it couldn't be turned into a tool. For years, I convinced myself that giving money kept peace. It didn't. It only quieted things while resentment grew. Boundaries are loud at first. Then they create a silence no one can pretend away. Communication slowed. Megan aimed at different audiences. Brandon found new things to rage at. Meanwhile, my parents began using small no's that sounded like yes to themselves. "No, we can't watch the kids this weekend." "No, we can't drive across town to fix your car." After about a month, my 16-year-old niece messaged me. "Big eyes, band t-shirts." "The house is pretty," she wrote. "Grandma looks happy." I sent a laughing emoji. She replied, "Okay." A small ceasefire from someone who didn't cause the problem. I wrote back, "Visit with Grandma's permission. No bookings, just pancakes." One night after a late shift, I wanted to see the home lit from within. I drove down. Through the window, I saw Dad reading in his recliner, glasses sliding down his nose, the same way he sat in our old apartment when the TV was our only light. Mom worked on a puzzle, blanket over her knees. The ocean murmured beneath everything. I didn't go in. I let the silence explain what all this had been for. Here's what I understand now. Love is not covering for someone else's harmful choices just because they're related to you. It's not applauding chaos. Love is a home with locks and warm light. It's giving your parents rest and telling everyone else that I'm not their bank, scapegoat, or emergency exit when their fires get too hot. I am their son, a brother who finally learned that clarity belongs at home, just as it does in my work. My sister is welcome on that terrace too. No business plan required. She can arrive with empty hands and an apology. She doesn't have to adjust anything to belong. Until then, the house stays as it is. The locks click. The gulls argue. The windows sing when the bay wind blows. My parents breathe easily inside. If there's a lesson, it's this. A gift shouldn't require payment. And a boundary isn't unkind. It's how love keeps the porch light on without burning down the neighborhood.